a very long-time Star Wars fan.
And folks, welcome to the Whitfield Report. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, and we're pre-recording a Mandalorian special. And I think, Adam, you might have gotten cut off there in your introduction, but Adam Hill, one of my colleagues at American Watchmen, although I'm not even sure if we're really doing that anymore, he and I are coming together to do a review of season 2 of The Mandalorian. I did a review of season 1 on the audio podcast last year, but I figured this year I would do a YouTube review. And Adam and I were talking about the finale, and he asked if he could come on. And so we've been planning this for like a week and a half now, or however long it's been. And so here we are. So, Adam, just to kind of start, what was your general impression of season 2 in general?
Well, season 2, it seems like they pulled out all the stops. They really bumped it up several notches compared to season 1. So
I tend to agree. The only thing, I felt like the beginning of the season was really slow.
yes,
It seemed like they retreaded like a lot of ground, and like the first 3 episodes were, I felt like they played it a little too safe because they were literally, I felt like the same storylines kind of as season 1. So that was a bit concerning, and I was really worried about how the first half of this season would go, to be honest. But I think around like episode 4 or 5, whenever they introduced Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians, I feel like that's when season 2 finally just started to kind of take off, in my view.
I would definitely agree there. Yeah, the episode where we finally get to see the other Mandalorians, we get to see Bo-Katan, and we got to see her two cohorts there, and that was a little refreshing because I remember seeing them in the Clone Wars series and all that stuff. So yeah,
Which I actually, believe it or not, I missed the entirety of Clone Wars and Rebels when it was on TV. So since I've had my Disney Plus account, I've gone back and I've watched most of Rebels, since it's only, well, let me put it this way. I've finished the most of Clone Wars, but I've recently started watching Rebels, so I'm kind of watching the whole thing out of order, kind of, I guess, machete order, as Star Wars fans like to call it. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like, now I'm picking up on like who all these characters are. In regards to like Bo-Katan, and I knew who Ahsoka was, because obviously she became pretty popular. But even so, I kind of like how they are starting to kind of weave the new EU together, kind of, weaving all these different shows and books together and whatnot.
I noticed they're picking little things out of Legends material and bringing it into canon.
Yeah. Now, just kind of in general, because I know that both you and I grew up in the now Legends era. So what were your initial concerns, if any, in regards to how Star Wars was going to treat that when you heard that Disney was buying Lucasfilm? Because I'm curious to know if your concerns were the same as mine and whatnot.
Well, I mean, I remember when that happened, and I remember when Disney took over and they announced that pretty much all expanded universe materials officially no longer canon. They basically scrapped everything. But then, the reason I think they did that is because they wanted to start from a clean slate, so then they could start bringing in stuff from Legends and incorporating it into the new canon.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. That was, I mean, I knew that they were going to do that. My concern is that they were going to butcher it, which they kind of. I mean, I think you know my opinion on the sequel trilogy by now. I don't hate it as much as some people do, but I definitely feel like there were some things that they just didn't need to do.
Oh yeah.
And that will kind of tie into the end of the Mandalorian later. But I mean, I feel like season one of the Mandalorian was really strong all the way through, and then season two kind of it it started weak but kind of grew over the season, which was good. And I think the biggest I think one of the biggest surprises for me was that they were able to transition Ahsoka from animation to live action pretty well.
Oh, very well. Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of surprised how well they were able to do it. I thought they were going to butcher something, but they um, didn't, obviously.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I think Rosario Dawson did a pretty good job at doing Ahsoka. I was kind of surprised they didn't pick Ashley Eckstein, who was the CGI model for the Clone Wars Ahsoka.
Yeah, but um, and I mean, I like her, but I mean, I don't know if she looks anything like. I mean, from what I've seen, she doesn't really look like. Although she was the base for CGI, so I mean, I don't know. Maybe they did some screen tests of her and she didn't translate well, or
Maybe.
that's one of those things that you know I don't know, but she she is cute, so I will say that, but um and then I guess the big thing that everyone is talking about now with The Mandalorian is the season finale, which you and
Oh,
I both
obviously.
rewatched. One of the things that I was I was also pleasantly surprised by was how they handled the return of Boba Fett, because they had kind of been dropping little hints that he was going to return, and um, I wasn't really I wasn't really sure how they were going to do it, and the way in which they brought him back was better than what I expected that they were going to do.
Oh yeah, and I love how they actually got the same guy that played Jango Fett to play Boba Fett in the series. It was kind of cool to see him back in live action as Boba.
Yeah, and I mean, I that was kind of surprising me because I had to look up the guy, and I mean he I'm not saying this to be critical, but I mean his age, I mean he still looks good, but I mean he's changed since like 2002 or whenever Attack of the Clones came out.
Yeah.
But I mean he did a good job. He kind of looks like I saw some people on Twitter saying he looks like Australian Joe Rogan
Oh
now.
my gosh.
So like if they gave Joe Rogan Mandalorian armor, that's what he would look like. But
Oh yeah. I tell you what though, man. Like the thing that I love, just going back to season two in general, the thing I loved about season two is John Favreau and Dave Filoni. They really turned up the heat when it comes to fan service. There was a lot of really good fan service that kind of that kind of sparked the nostalgia in the longtime fans.
yeah, they sparked nostalgia, but they didn't drown us in it either. I
Uh-huh.
feel I feel like and I feel like that's one thing that like a lot of like I feel like Rogue One was a lot of fan service, but the one part where Rogue One that movie kind of fell short was they kind of tried to bury people in it, I feel like, and it
Right.
just ended up like not flowing real well. I mean, it was a good movie, but you know, it's nowhere near as good as The Mandalorian is.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that you said on one of our texts that, you know, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are the best writers in Star Wars right now, and
Obviously, yeah.
I think that's pretty evident. Um, so obviously the big thing that everyone is talking about is the ending of the uh, the final episode, and let me just say that I feel like the beginning of the episode when they were fighting on the bridge when you had you know, the female Mandalorians and Cara Dune, that was all good, but it felt like they were kind of blasting through all those stormtroopers a little too easily with no resistance, and so I was kind of like, okay, when are they going to hit a wall? And then they did, both, you know, metaphorically and literally somewhat. And um, I like the fact that also they they actually made the Dark Troopers somewhat of a threat to you know, Mando and to the rest of the group. And even after Mando sucked them out of the airlock, so to speak, they were able to kind of come back and, you know, begin wreaking havoc again. And I thought it was a really good setup. Um, what were your thoughts initially leading up to, I guess, the the end of the finale?
I kind of like the Dark Trooper droids, but then again, I didn't like them because they, like, if you look back at the original, like the Star Wars Battlefront storyline from the game, and if you look at some of the comics and you see what the Dark Troopers really were. Like the Dark Troopers, they were like the special forces of the stormtroopers, and so
Right.
changing them to droids. I mean, they were cool looking, but for them to be like the top of the line, like special operations, the droids seemed a little bit slow and clunky with their movements.
Yeah, well, and initially, it was also kind of initially. I will say that the one criticism I have with the Dark Troopers too is I was a bit confused because initially I thought that with um I keep wanting to call him Gus Fring because I know him from Breaking Bad, but oh, what's his face? Oh, Moff Gideon.
Yeah, Moff Gideon.
I was initially thinking that the Moff Gideon or Moff Fring or whatever we want to call him was going to use Baby Yoda's DNA for the Dark Troopers and kind of make them like a super, I guess, soldier type of, you know, thing initially. I didn't think they were going to be droids.
Yeah,
Um,
I could have seen that. But I tell you what, though, like kind of jumping off the Dark Trooper thing. Speaking of well, now we all know him as Grogu. Um, his DNA. I don't know if you caught it, but in one of the, I think it was, yeah, the episode before the Ahsoka episode. Um, you see that clone room, and if you look closely, you'll see a Snoke clone in the back.
yeah, I did see that, and I did want to talk to you about that. You know, after we kind of get through the other thought I thought with them making the Dark Troopers droids, though, that has to kind of do with Disney. I'm kind of thinking because, well, let's just jump to what everyone's talking about with, the mysterious Jedi appearing at the end and saving everyone's ass. I mean, from the get-go, as soon as I saw the X-Wing, there was no question in my mind as to who it was.
Oh, of course.
And,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's what kind of amused me is there are people online who were like, I had no idea who it was until I saw that green lightsaber. I thought maybe it could have been Ezra, or it could have been Ahsoka, and I'm like, neither of those characters have ever piloted an X-Wing,
Right.
to my knowledge.
Well, I mean, you got that, and I love, like for us, like longtime fans who knew who that was as soon as the X-wing flew by. You're like, oh yeah, I know who's in that. But then of course, I love Cara Dune's reaction. She goes, only one X-wing, yay, we're saved.
I'm like, no, but it's the X-wing. So
Red 5, man, Red 5.
And this is another thing that's interesting too, is from what I've heard from reading Gina Carano's Twitter and everyone else, I guess they had no idea that Luke was the actual Jedi until the day of shooting, I guess. Like
Yeah.
they kept everything under wraps, even from the cast, which I thought was pretty cool. Now, in terms of Luke himself, I mean, what did you, just that whole sequence? I watched that at least like 6 times. To me, that was actually better than that was basically the Jedi equivalent of the Darth Vader hallway scene in Rogue One, I think.
Oh, I mean, yeah, obviously, and in my opinion, the whole Luke sequence from the moment that she was looking at the Mandalorian girl, was looking, see that dark cloaked figure walking down the hallway, and I'm like, from that point all the way pretty much until the end, in my opinion, that was one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars.
Yeah, and I like the fact too that Gideon goes from being like really menacing and diabolical to basically pissing his pants, because I mean and someone brought this up, one of my other friends brought this up. He made a good point that this takes place only 6 years after Return of the Jedi. So I guess from the Empire's perspective, Luke Skywalker killed both the Emperor and Darth Vader, because no one knows what actually happened on the Death Star. So at that point, Luke is kind of the Darth Vader to the Empire, and so they're all terrified of him, which is something that I really like, and I hope if they do more with Luke, I'd like to see more post Return of the Jedi stuff, like what happened after the end of the original trilogy with Luke.
Oh, of course. And like, I tell you what, that scene, like one of my favorite parts of that whole scene is, as the droid dark troopers were punching down the door, you look over at Moff Gideon, he's got this really prideful, arrogant smile on his face, because in his mind he knows what's about to happen. And then as soon as that Mandalorian girl goes, a Jedi, you just see his eyes get really wide and he starts breathing fast and he's like, oh crap.
Well, and part of me believes that that's because he knows that the Jedi has shown up. Like
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it would have had the same effect if Ahsoka would have shown up, or if Ezra, um, who at this point is still lost in the Outer Rim, but people were predicting that he was going to make a comeback, somehow. Um, but I mean, I think the fact that the Dark Troopers paused, that was the one weird thing, because since they're droids, how did they know that it was Luke? Gideon, I
I
can.
don't Well, I don't think they knew it was Luke. I actually watched the YouTube video on that. They're like, why did the droid troopers just stop? Because the droid troopers were programmed to respond to the biggest threat. And before they stopped punching, it was the people on the bridge. And then the dark troopers in the hangar bay, they saw that X-Wing come in, and suddenly the X-Wing became the primary threat, so they stopped. And then the dark trooper droids, I'm sure they were able to send signals to each other, so they probably sent signals to all the other droids saying, we have a new threat, and that's when they stopped.
Yeah. And part of me thinks that with it being Disney, they probably made the Dark Troopers droids because, I mean, I think it would have been cool if they would have like actually had actual like human Dark Troopers. But I don't think Disney would allow for that much, you know, human, I guess, slaughter, which is my one complaint. I feel like that's the one thing where the show has become a bit Disney-fied, but I mean, it is what it is. We did get to see Luke in his, you know, full form, which was awesome. The only
Oh,
thing
yeah.
that's the only thing that's a little disappointing to me is that Luke still becomes bitch Luke uh from The Last Jedi, which you know, I'm not sure how I feel about that still. I'd like to see them at least explore like how he fell from grace a bit more.
Well, then, like, even like, I'm sure you saw. So all this time, Luke, like they had it that Kylo Ren was the one that was destroying the temple and killing all the students. But in the comic, one of the comics, Rise of Kylo Ren, which is canon, it was actually revealed that it was not Kylo Ren that killed all the Jedi students. It was actually Palpatine back behind the scenes that did it all.
Mm, that I mean that's an interesting. That's the one thing too that I feel like The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker did kind of muck up is I personally feel like they're relying a bit too much on Palpatine being the big bad. I would have liked to see them bring back like the Sith Emperor from the EU and maybe have him be the big bad, or maybe make Snoke that big bad initially before they killed him
Well,
off. That was kind of my hope.
well, Snoke, you see that's one thing that disappointed me is they completely they trash Snoke in The Last Jedi. Like the Snoke from Last Jedi and the Snoke from The Force Awakens were two completely different characters. Like the Snoke from The Force Awakens was much more menacing, much more villainous. He even looked different. His whole head and facial structure looked different than the weird old guy with scars and puffy eyebrows that they gave us in The Last Jedi.
Well, we can thank Ryan we can thank Ryan Johnson for that.
Because I agree. And here's the thing. When it comes to Snoke, I think J.J. Abrams did it right.
Well, that was one of the things that was so confusing was when they announced like 7, 8, and 9, they announced that, you know, 7 was going to be directed by JJ, 8 was going to be directed by Ryan Johnson, and then 9 was going to be directed by, you know, JJ again. And I was like, why are they switching directors halfway? It seems pretty clear that JJ had like, he hasn't said this, but it seems pretty apparent that he had a completely different vision for what episode 8 what episode 8 and 9 were going to be initially.
Well, yeah, like episode 8 was supposed to, well, I know episode 9, JJ wasn't the original director. It was supposed to be Colin Trevorrow, who was supposed to do 9.
Oh.
Then something happened with his family or something, and then JJ came in and took over.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Because if you look at some of the original concept art for episode 9 from Colin, like, oh my gosh, man, episode 9 was supposed to be like completely different from what it was now. So.
Well, Luke was supposed to be alive for 8 and 9 initially.
Yeah,
is what I remember reading. He wasn't supposed to, you know, be who he turned out to be in, you know, episode 8, I guess.
Right.
So,
but I mean, like, I hate how they, like, their portrayal of him in episode 8. Like, and the thing is, people, I do disagree with people that are like, well, he was Luke Skywalker, he wouldn't have run away. I'm like, well, if you think about it, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he ran away. Yoda exiled himself. So 2 of the most powerful Jedi ever basically exiled themselves and ran away when things went bad. So it actually was fitting that Luke did the same thing. I hate what they did with this character in episode 8. Like this guy who just throws lightsabers, because even though Yoda exiled himself and Obi-Wan did too, they were still both Jedi and they still practiced their Jedi art while in exile.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker just gets all mopey. He becomes a mopey, grumpy, depressed old man, throws the lightsaber away, and like drinks milk from space cows, and like I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, Luke.
Well, I'm not so upset that they made him a grumpy old man. I'm upset more by the fact that they did next to no, you know, they basically gave no explanation. I mean, they did a little bit, but it was kind of like really, dude, you got afraid of your nephew, and you know that you can save him, so you just, you know, even after you slotted the order, you just ran away. It seemed out of character after he saved Darth Vader, you know, and redeemed him, who, I mean, let's face it, Vader was at that point a mass murderer, you know, and he was redeemable, but yet, you know, Kylo wasn't. I guess that was, for me at least, where the logic kind of fell down.
Well, of course, because when they showed those flashbacks, and I mean, in my view, Luke Skywalker, he betrayed Kylo Ren, not the other way around.
Right.
So.
But I mean, I would have liked to have seen them maybe explore that a little more, as opposed to just doing like a 15-minute exposition thing. I don't know, that's my biggest criticism with The Last Jedi. But anyway, going back to Mandalorian, did you see the post-credits scene, or
I mean,
were you like me where you had to go back and watch it?
Oh, I saw it. Oh yeah, but Boba Fett, man, Boba Fett just takes over.
So, what are your thoughts on that whole set up for the Book of Boba. I like the premise, but I have a few concerns. But I'll let you go first.
I like it too, and I'm wondering where they're gonna go. Because like Boba's now he's basically the ruler of Tatooine now, so he controls Tatooine effectively. And I'm wondering what they're gonna do with that, and like who his enemies are gonna be, and how it's gonna, and yeah, all of that.
Here's I'm curious about that too. What I'm worried about is I don't want them to make Boba like an anti-hero. I like the idea
Yeah,
of Boba Fett as a straight up villain. I kind of want him to become like the Tony Soprano of the Star Wars universe in a sense where he is a bad guy and that's, clear. But, even though he's a bad guy, you still kind of like him. I don't like I don't like when most franchises make like the villains anti-heroes. I don't want them to become like the Punisher or the John or like the John Wick of the Star Wars universe because I feel like there are already so many franchises out there trying to do that. And I mean, I feel like at this point we need good villains in Star Wars because we're kind of lacking in this current timeline. Um, but you know,
yeah, that is one of my only real concerns about Disney, because now, in my opinion, now that Disney has it, I don't think we're ever going to get a true menacing villain ever again, as long as Disney has control.
but yeah, but that's what we all want.
I know,
Um,
like I'm just saying, like this will never happen. But I would love to see a dark side centered Star Wars movie that's rated R.
oh yeah, me too.
Oh,
I would love to see them adapt I would love to see them go back to the old Republic timeline and seriously adapt the Darth Bane novels, which are extremely dark, but if they do it well, they could adapt them. I feel.
they could that, or even do a Darth Plagueis movie. The book was amazing.
The book I have on Audible, which is I
Yeah.
mean reading the book and then listening to it are both amazing experiences. But yeah, the I feel like I'd love for them to do a Plagueis movie, but again, I'm kind of a little hesitant because I feel like they would maybe Disneyfy and take out some of the darker, elements of the whole Plagueis thing. But who knows if John and Dave are heading it up, I feel like they'll do a good job with it.
I
So.
I think so too. So kind of going back to our original Mandalorian subject here. So what are your thoughts on how they did the CGI for Luke? What'd you think of it?
I know people are hating on it, but you know, I like the fact that they brought back Mark Hamill kind of as the voice, so to speak. The fact that they de-aged his voice and his face, that didn't bother me at all. Obviously I feel like that kind of had to happen. The only thing uh, the only thing that was kind of the only thing that kind of went through my mind was, well, how much did that cost, for them to do? I was just kind of curious about that. But I mean, I thought the special effects, I mean, yeah, it was pretty clear, but it wasn't as jarring as like when they actually made it look realistic, whereas like Rogue One with them trying to CG Peter Cushing and then trying to CG Carrie Fisher, those are both kind of disturbing, to be honest, because it looks like PS3, you know, like, or like
Okay,
video game graphics in a
I
movie.
liked Leia. I liked CGI Leia, but yes, C, CGI Arkin that just it didn't sit well.
Yeah, I've seen better deep fakes of CGK than what we got in the movie, but I feel like they did pretty good with Luke. Um, and I actually, the guy who was the body, who was actually like the body for Luke, he actually, I will say this, he could have maybe pulled off a younger Luke on his own if they wanted to go that route. I know that some people were wanting Sebastian Stan to be Luke, and they might do that in the future, but I thought this was good. You know, I think they did an
Oh yeah.
okay job with the CGI.
So here's a I love talking Star Wars theory. So here's a theory question for you.
Uh-huh.
In your opinion, is Grogu doomed to be killed at the slaughter of Luke's new temple?
You know, I'm conflicted on that because part of me kind of feels like that's where they should go, and maybe that's why Luke goes crazy. Like
Yeah.
I could kind of see that as a possible narrative, but I feel like again with it being Disney, like and especially now with Grogu being like such a beloved character, not to mention a cash cow
Oh
for
yeah.
them. I feel like they're going to explain like he's either going to reunite with Mando at some point and go off on adventures with Mando again, or he's going to escape the temple somehow, and like he'll either have his own comic book or maybe his own series or movie at some point. Um,
I kind of like the sound of a Jedi Master Grogu.
yeah, I like that as long as they don't like make him a clone of Yoda, because then I feel like that would kind of confuse like newer younger fans
What I
maybe.
would I agree, but what I would love to see, I would love to see Grogu go back to his home planet so we can actually see the origin of his race.
Yeah, but I feel like we're not going to get that until after George Lucas passes away, because George Lucas has said that like he has intentionally kept Yoda's species, like mysterious. Now, you know, do I believe that? Maybe George was just maybe he was being lazy when, because like he claims that he also wrote the prequel trilogy before the sequels, but everyone else has said that that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like George just never, you know, he never gave Yoda a species name and then just, made that struck later. But I kind of agree with you. I feel like at some point we do need like a Yoda species reveal. Like I don't even care if we don't get a name for them. I would just love to see like
Right.
other Yodas um, out there, especially since we know they're so force sensitive. So
Oh, of course. I mean, we've seen three of the species now so far. So
yeah, although technically I don't think Yaddle is canon anymore. And I know that like for the 18 and under listeners of this podcast, they're probably going to be going, "Who the fuck is Yaddle?" So go
well,
back and watch
yeah.
episode 1, uh kiddos. So, let me ask you this real quick regarding Yoda. Puppet Yoda or CG Yoda? Which one do you like better?
CG.
Really?
Yep.
I I like Puppet Yoda myself. I think it looks more realistic, but that's just me. Um, another another theory question. So what do you think is going to happen with I've heard a crazy theory that like Mando is actually going to become like a Jedi. Um, and that like it's his sort of how he becomes a Jedi. Um, I'm not I'm not sure if I like that premise. I kind of like the idea of him being like just a guy in, the Star Wars universe, like being surrounded by Jedi and Sith. But what are your thoughts on that?
I don't see that happening. I don't think they'll do that. What I think you're going to see in season three is going to be centered around Mandalore and the battle and the fight for Mandalore.
So kind of like Star Wars meets Game of Thrones, I guess, with
Kind of like that, yeah.
hopefully less shitty of an ending. So,
Yeah, and less gratuitous stuff.
okay, oh come on, that was the best part of that was the only good part of Game of Thrones. Speaking of, what do you think of Pedro Pascal as Mando?
I like him as Mando.
Have I can't I love him as Mando, but to be honest, as someone who watched Narcos, to me he'll always be the DEA guy, that happens to be wearing a man a Mando armor. So,
Well, he also plays one of the main villains in the new Wonder Woman movie,
oh yeah, oh yeah. Did you see
Maxwell
that?
Lord.
Did you see Wonder Woman yet?
No,
Okay, I did. We'll maybe we'll save that for another podcast, or you might have to listen to my review at some point. I I liked it initially, and then like after a few days, I was kind of like, you know, I actually have now I have some time to digest it. It's not as good as I thought it was initially.
yeah,
So
I'm just curious to see how they brought back Captain Trevor.
it's
So
I mean, that's yeah, that's the big issue I have. It's really weird. It's really weird and kind of convoluted the way. I won't spoil anything, but it's
good.
like it's one of the weirdest. It's one of the weirder parts of the movie. I'll just leave it at that.
Um, oh, so are you familiar with the Jedi Fallen Order video game?
Oh yeah, oh yes, of course. In fact, I have both of the Fallen Order. Uh, oh wait, no, I don't have Fallen Order. I am familiar with Fallen Order, but I have the Jedi Outcast games on my
Okay.
computer.
Well, well,
Which
Jedi Fallen Order he follows a Jedi named Cal Kestis who is
yeah,
so
I've played Fallen Order.
okay. So now that you know that, so in your opinion, who do you think is most likely to make an appearance in Mando season 3? Cal Kestis, Ezra Bridger, or Mace Windu? There was never any canon. It was never officially declared canon that he died.
Well, let me I think we're either go I don't think we're gonna get Ezra in the Mandalorian, at least not yet. And I don't think we're going to get Kyle Katarn at least yet, because LucasArts has kind of said that they want to keep the most of the video game characters kind of in their own like video game universe right now. So I'm thinking it probably will be like Windu at one point, or as I like to call him, Jedi Master Mother. Sam Jackson's favorite
Yes.
word basically.
So so with that, yeah, I could see them bringing back Mace Windu because I mean, there was a comic that was made that took place after Order 66, and like again, like it was never actually proven that he died because Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he survived that fall in Order 66. Granted, he fell in the water, and then like so many Jedi have like survive extreme like distance falls and like without any scratch. And
yeah.
but
Although
you know
Mace did have his hand chopped off, and then he was fried basically by Palpatine.
yeah,
That's no small feat to survive. But
no. And yeah, and there's that. But then so season 3, going back to season 3 speculations, they have to bring him in because Ahsoka mentioned it as the person that she is looking for. So for season 3, who would be your pick for Grand Admiral Thrawn, actor wise?
ooh, I've thought of that. Um, like honestly, and this was true even when I read the original Thrawn books. I would either always picture either Hugh Grant or honestly Hugh Laurie from House. I'm not sure if you're
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
familiar with him, but Hugh Laurie actually he played a great villain in this kind of like a terrorist type in this show called The Night Manager. He basically plays like a terrorist, like arms dealer type, and very much remind me of Thrawn's character, where he was like really smart and calculating and 10 steps ahead. So I would love to see Hugh Laurie, but at the same time, Hugh Laurie I think is almost 60, so I'd like to see them do that, but I don't think they're going to. Who do you have in mind for Thrawn?
Like my number one pick for him, I don't think they're gonna get him because he's such a big budget actor. Benedict Cumberbatch. I
Yeah,
could
I
see
mean,
him as Grand Admiral Thrawn easily.
I I like Benedict Cumberbatch. I have to admit I was kind of disappointed in the way that he did Khan and Star Trek, and I don't think it was his fault. I think it was the script he had
Yeah.
to work with. But I mean, I could see him doing that. I was really surprised how much I liked him as Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't sure about that. Honestly, I could also see. Hmm, I don't know if if they wanted to go like I could also maybe see honestly Daniel Craig, James Bond as maybe.
He could. I don't his it needs to be someone with a like weird setting, but more of a longer face. His face isn't long enough really to play
Yeah.
Grand Admiral. Like another person I could see doing it would be Tom Hiddleston, Loki.
Oh yeah.
So
I oh yeah. I could actually see Hiddleston more than I could Benedict actually. It's they've shown one that I did not get at all is Matthew McConaughey, and I love everything.
as Thrawn, no way.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a big Matthew McConaughey fan, but I can't see him as Thrawn or really
And
I
oh, Here's another one I saw. I'm not sure how he'd be, but he could be good. Michael Fassbender.
Actually, Fassbender I think would be perfect. He he was the one I was blanking on and initially.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't think of his name, but he's actually he and Hugh Laurie alternatively are the ones that I kind of visualize as Thrawn. So it just depends kind of if they want to, age Thrawn a bit from, Rebels.
Oh, of course,
So,
yeah.
who do you see as like a live action Ezra,
Oh,
perhaps?
Ezra Bridger. That's a great question.
I feel like they could do a lot with him because when we see him, he's still a teenager, and
Yep.
if he's been out, in the Outer Rim for all this time, it seems like he would be an adult by now,
Hmm.
so it could give Lucas a lot of leeway creatively.
That's a
Um,
great. I can't really think. I can't think of any actors around his age that would be a good fit.
Honestly, I could see maybe Tom Holland, um, if they,
Maybe.
I mean, if they gave him like a more realistic like because I know that like in the animated series they gave him like spiky hair and but that's animation, so like realistically I could kind of see them maybe giving him like a more straight laced, or something, or um someone actually mentioned, funny enough, that Hayden Christensen maybe, but obviously Hayden Christensen is Anakin, so
Yeah.
that wouldn't. I mean, I if Hayden weren't playing Anakin, I could see it, but he is, so that's out. Maybe they'll cast like an unknown as
Yeah. Some new unknown actor for him. Yeah.
as Ezra. So
But yeah, like season three. I'm really looking forward to see because and season three is good. I think it's going to be centered mainly around Mandalore. And speaking of Mandalore, let's unpack this here. So all we know about the lore of the dark saber is that whole thing that Moff Gideon and Bo-Katan said that the sword had to be won in combat. That is like there's nowhere else except the Mandalorian show where that is made known
yeah,
in the Clone Wars it was given, it was passed on to somebody else
yeah.
without combat.
Which I actually had to like I actually rewatched Clone Wars to double check, and because again, like I've been watching Clone Wars and Rebels. Like I'm not caught up on the like I've kind of been skipping around, episodes and seasons. So I'm not as well versed in Clone Wars, but yeah, that was definitely an episode I saw where it was given. So like that was the one thing that was weird. I feel like maybe they tried to wedge it in to make it seem like Thor's hammer. And then didn't wasn't isn't the dark saber initially a holdover from the EU as well?
Yeah, the dark saber was created and wielded by an old Republic, an actual Mandalorian Jedi Master.
Yeah, that's
So
so. So here's my question. Probably one of my all time favorite characters in Star Wars has to be Revan, both as Darth Revan and Revan the Enlightened.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I and I could see maybe not them introducing Revan as like a character, but I could see them introducing like the concept of Revan and bringing him back into canon in season 3 of.
Well, they did in the Last Jedi.
Oh yeah, that's right. They did. Um,
That it was said that the broken red kyber crystal that Luke Skywalker had in his hut was it belonged to an old Republic Jedi Crusader. And in all the stories, the only person that was called the Jedi Crusader was Revan.
so do you think they'll bring him do you think they'll bring his, I guess, lore into into Mandalorian season 3? Because if it's on Mandalore, I can't see them not bringing up the Jedi Wars of.
Well, of course, because because back in the days of like Mandalore the Great, like back in those early Mandalorian days, yeah, the Mandalorians and the Jedi were like they were eternal enemies.
And to me, if they ever do like an Old Republic timeline, which I'm hoping they do, I'm curious to see who do you see as uh Revan, because to me
Easy, easy, Keanu Reeves.
I was gonna say that there's only one choice, and it's Keanu. So
And of course, the I'll have to say this: the whole social justice crowd wants if Revan was reintroduced, they'd want to make Revan a female.
well, I mean, yeah, well, okay, so that is one thing I want to talk to you about. As like we're talking about social justice warriors. Um, what did you think of the whole Mandalorian boob armor controversy?
It, in my opinion, it is a big nothing burger. They don't.
Yeah,
They're not doing that armor to accentuate to accentuate that feature. They're they're giving that shape to the armor because men, and unlike what some people think, men and women are different. You can't just put a hard, flat-chested armor piece on a woman because, like, literally, it's gonna be painful for her.
well, also,
So,
I don't know if you've like been to any museum exhibits with armor. I have, but like back in like medieval times, there was literal, you know, female armor
of course,
that had, anatomically correct, you know. I mean, to me, I almost wonder if that was like if that was a publicity stunt, almost, just because the outrage was like, really, you guys are. I thought you guys were supposed to be like pro boobs and everything. Why are you guys screaming about this? Like, out of
oh yeah,
everything, this was the least.
and
You know.
speaking of the whole the Mandalorians, my question is in the season finale, where was the third Mandalorian, the guy? Where's he at?
Someone, I don't know if you know who the YouTuber The Critical Drinker is, but he's one of my favorite YouTubers now for film reviews. He actually asked that same question. Like, for some reason they wrote him off, and I don't know why.
I like this character.
I mean, uh, did he even really have a character? I don't really see. I don't feel like they even like. I liked his character too, but I feel like they didn't even give us a chance to really get to know his character at all.
Not really, but I'm like, I wish I would have seen more of him. Maybe, I mean, there were rumors. The rumor I heard is that there was a story behind it that he was actually back on Mandalore.
That would be interesting. So in terms of spin-offs, what do you think of like an Ahsoka spin-off in general?
I'm excited about it because I would, the thing that I would love to see the most out of that whole spinoff is I want to see some interaction between her and Luke.
Yes, that's what I think that's what, like, because I have to be honest, like initially when initially when Ahsoka was created as a character, I was kind of like, why are they doing this? This messes up the whole timeline. The way they've handled her so far is great, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I want to know where she was the entire original trilogy. Um, and I do want to see her interact with, you know, not just Luke, but also perhaps Leia somehow. If they decide, I mean, obviously you can't bring Carrie Fisher back, but maybe cast someone else or something as Leia. I think that would be neat. Um, I also like the fact I like the idea of Cara Dune getting her own spin-off. Although with Gina Carano coming out as MAGA, um,
Yeah.
I know that's another thing. I'm glad she wasn't asked. I was kind of thinking that she might, just because Disney does lean on that other side,
Yeah.
so to speak.
But I did like with her and the other two, I did like how a true they did some true strong female characters without all the cringe.
Yeah. And she's good at that in general too, as an actress. I've
Well,
found.
her and also a Ming Na Wen, like she's really good with that too.
Yeah. Well, and
And then of course I forgot what the other girl's name is. It was with Bo Katan, but I love the
uh
actress they picked to play Bo Katan. Like it was
okay,
perfect.
okay, Kate Sackhoff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that I never saw Stargate, but supposedly that's Captain Starbuck or whatnot from
Huh.
Battlestar Galactica.
Okay.
So yeah, I actually at first I didn't recognize her because usually she has blonde hair, and so the red threw me initially, and then I was like, oh yeah, that is Katie Sackhoff. So,
Yeah.
um,
Oh, here's another Mandalorian question for you.
mhm.
There's only one right answer. No. In your opinion, what was the best opening scene in both seasons? If you combine both seasons together, out of all the Mandalorian, what was your favorite opening scene?
Ooh, probably this. I know this was a weak episode, but to me, the best opening scene of the series was when Mando goes into that seedy cage match thing in season 2.
Oh yes.
Um, and I mean that's the episode where he ends up going to save that frog lady, and the episode, and they get attacked by spiders. So the episode as a whole wasn't that good. I thought that was one of the worst episodes. But the opening was pretty strong because it shows that Mando, he's not just a bounty hunter, but he can survive, in kind of really seedy and dingy, spots. He kind of had a few Batman vigilante moments
Hmm.
there, which I thought was cool. Just it showed that he really matured, kind of as he wasn't afraid to kind of be a bit more gruff if he needed to be.
Yeah.
What about you in terms of favorite
Um,
openings?
like for me, it's an easy one. I think the opening scene in the Ahsoka episode was the best of the series.
Oh yeah, where you actually get to see her.
Well, the
Yeah.
thing is, I was not so I knew so like several months ago, it was announced that Rosario Dawson was going to play Ahsoka, and I knew we were going to see her in an episode of season 2, but I had no idea that they were going to bring her in that quick. Like she appeared in the episode 30 seconds in. So.
Yeah, well, I'm actually glad that they did that because I was worried that they were going to save her like till the end or something, and then that was going to be like because they cheapened out on her look and whatnot. But I mean, they did Ahsoka. I think even more so than Luke. Actually, was really impressive the way they handled her, and I mean, also considering that Rosario Dawson isn't Ashley Eckstein, like her voice is different, but I mean, you can almost kind of see I can kind of see, Rosario Dawson kind of being like an aged, um, Ahsoka.
Yeah.
So, and Rosario Dawson was also, at least back when Netflix was part of the MCU, she was in all the Netflix MCU shows.
Yeah.
So.
But next season's gonna be. There's tons coming out next season. Next year you got Mandalorian season 3. You got the Book of Boba. You got Ahsoka. You got that new one that I'm looking forward to seeing, Acolyte. It's the first live action series of the High Republic era.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
No, I'm not as familiar with the High Republic era. What is that like before the Old Republic or like
No,
is that?
High Republic is about. They were saying it's about 400 to 500 years before the Phantom Menace. So basically, the reason they call it the High Republic era is that's basically when they said that was the pinnacle of the Republic and that was the pinnacle of the Jedi Order. That was back when they were at their most powerful and like it was the peak of their existence.
Yeah, because I've seen like on Audible because I've bought a few Star Wars books. They keep recommending like this High Republic book that's like I guess for pre-order. So that must be what that's tying into then I guess.
Yeah, and they're saying it. I mean, there's a chance because there's a villain in there, so it'd be cool if we could see maybe some. I'm sure. Yeah, you've read the book, or you've listened to it. I'm sure, so you know who Darth Tenebris is.
Oh yes.
So I'm curious if they'll either have him in here, or if maybe they'll have a young Darth Tenebris with Darth Tenebris's master in the High Republic.
Yeah, we don't wasn't Tenebris Plagueis's
Yep,
master?
he was
Okay.
Plagueis's master.
Yeah, because I remember like my first introduction to Darth Tenebris actually was at the beginning of the Plagueis novel when Plagueis like kills him off, and then
Uh huh.
I was like, oh wait, this guy was an actual Sith Lord and not just a character that they wrote as like a throwaway. So
But yeah, so I mean, So I'm curious who the villain is going to be in in the High Republic era. So
yeah, I'm I mean at this point I'm hoping that they really give Dave and Jean like total creative control over Lucas because other than hiring those two, I don't really think Kathy Kennedy knows what she's. Or let me put it this way: I think Kathy Kennedy knows what she's doing, but she's all for the feminist agenda. So she's trying to, you know, let me just say she has her own agenda and leave it at that.
oh, of course, yeah. Give Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau full control. I agree. Well, I do know that it hasn't been confirmed that it was scrapped, but as far as I know, the Star Wars trilogy that the Game of Thrones creators, the showrunners were doing, is still happening, and there's rumors that it was supposed to be Old Republic.
Yeah, which I mean, prior to the stinker end of like Game of Thrones, when Game of Thrones was still good, I was like, holy crap! The fact that Dave and Dave are doing the Old Republic, like it's going to be really good. And then I almost wonder if someone at Lucasfilm like saw the ending of, and then decided to. I In all seriousness, though, from what I heard, that's also the reason why Game of Thrones turned out the way it did, because I guess they were so focused on like Star Wars that they kind of started working on that and
Hmm,
rushed, Game of Thrones. I don't know. I think that's one of the things that will forever be internet speculation.
for sure.
Um, any anything else as far as the Mandalorian goes?
I think we need to see more Luke. We have to see Luke again. Like we have to.
So in regards to that, like long term, here's an interesting question. Would you rather they give Luke like his own series, or give Luke like, you know, another movie or something, or would you rather that Luke
Series.
just or would you rather that Luke just like make cameos, kind of like uh I don't know, kind of like how Stan Lee does, or like
No, I would love, so cameos are cool. It'd be cool to still see cameos, but I would love to see a Luke Skywalker series that takes place in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. Like I want to see the events. I want to see a young Ben Solo.
yeah. Well, assuming that Mark Hamill, I mean, unfortunately, he can't be Luke forever. Who do you see potentially as being recast for?
I like Sebastian. I like him.
I like Sebastian too. I'm not sure if Sebastian has the voice of Luke. That's my only thing. He definitely has the look, and I mean, depending on how Falcon and Winter Soldier does, he might not have time to do both.
Yeah.
But I definitely like him the most. I would like. I'd actually I would actually like them to maybe bring in Mara Jade or something at some point.
Well, they were during the making of Rise of Skywalker. There were rumors that there were going to be flashbacks to Mara Jade, but that never happened.
Yeah,
That was in Colin Trevorrow's original script that he was actually going to introduce Mara Jade into the canon.
that would have been cool to
Yeah,
see her. But yeah, I mean, I'm certainly hoping that if we do get Luke, it will in fact be Sebastian. And I mean, I feel like a lot of problems with Episode 8 in terms of Luke characters, as long as they explain his downfall and show the progression, I have no problem with them, doing what they did with Luke. They just need to explain a lot of
agreed.
that.
Like I would like to see a fill in the gap. Like I want to see that whole event, and I want to see him actually retreat to that planet and see like the emotional and mental turmoil that he went through with that and how he became who he was.
Which is why, as much as I love the character, that's one of the reasons why I think that Grogu needs to be killed off. I feel
No, no.
I feel like I I feel like that. I mean, I love Grogu, but story wise, I feel like that's like a reasonable. Um, I mean, what do you think they're gonna do with Grogu long
Well, I know
term?
they did say that the Mandalorian is about 20 years prior. Is like 20 years prior to Episode 7. So
Right. Um, so then do you think he'll go back with Amanda or at some point or
I think what I think happens is I honestly think I think R2D2 saves Grogu.
so? Because I mean, in episode 6, he's 50 years old and yet he's still like an infant, basically. Basically,
Well, I mean
or
their species ages slower because I mean Yoda lived to be 900, so
yeah, so yeah, um, yeah, yeah. Grogu at this point is, I mean, I feel like they've actually done pretty good, for just using a puppet that basically makes like cute baby noises, and
oh, of course.
but it'll be interesting to see how they develop him like as a character.
I
So,
want to see him talk.
well, and that's the other question. Will he talk backwards or forwards, do you think?
um oh, so this is kind of a little throwback to episode 2. Did you know that there was one line that Yoda spoke naturally?
Oh, I seem to remember that, but I can't remember which one.
His his line was, and he said it normally, completely normally. He said, "Concentrate all your firepower on the nearest starship."
Oh yeah.
I'm like, wait, you talk normal.
Do you think it was that on purpose, or did Frank Oz forget to speak it backwards?
Like, because he could have said, "On the nearest starship, concentrate your firepower."
Yeah,
But
I
no,
could.
he said a complete full sentence. I was like, all right, Yoda.
Well, and that is one thing too. Is in the Old Republic video games, the Yoda species character speaks forwards. I
Huh.
seem to remember. So yeah, that
Speaks forward, he does.
that could be very interesting.
Yeah.
So all right, well, is any final thoughts or anything else you want to cover in regards to Star Wars or The Mandalorian? I mean, there's a lot more that we could unpack, but I know that you have you
Yeah.
have some time constraints, and I have time constraints.
Yeah. Nothing else for me today.
All I will say is, in regards to this is, I was kind of disappointed with Disney Plus initially because there wasn't a lot of content that came out like last year when it launched, other than The Mandalorian and other than like maybe a few like Marvel animated things. But I feel like in 2021 they're definitely upping their content, which will be good.
Oh yeah.
So, um, so that's good. So that's good. Where can people find you on social media if they want to communicate with you or chat Star Wars, or are you on the DL from social media right now?
I'm I'm kind of on the down low from social media at the moment. So
All right, so they'll just have to communicate with me to kind of get to you, I guess.
exactly.
So, all right, Adam. Well,
Go.
thanks for coming on. So,
Yeah, it was awesome.
and folks, thanks for listening to this and or watching this on YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, for those that are interested, please leave in the comments and let us know what you thought of Mandalorian season 2, and for those listening on the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and review and all that jazz on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts. And I'll be back on Thursday, hopefully, to be talking about the pork, stimulus package. We'll be covering politics again, but this was a little fun, intermission from politics, and then it'll be New Year. So, yeah, thanks for listening, folks, and from all of your NGC studios, have a good night. God bless. God save this free nation. God, freedom, I can see in that order, and thanks for listening.